Saturday Night Live with James Franco is over, but we're just getting started here on Saturday Night Live, live on postshowrecaps.com. And now here are the two Groa guys ready to talk about SNL. I'm Rob Cesternino. Here's Rich Tackenberg. Rich, how are you?
Not good, Rob. The post-show recaps databases have been hacked. So just take it out there now. If anyone's wondering, my email address is cuterthanjohnnydsavella@AOL.com. just let it be known now.
Oh my God! Anyway, so
and my password is cutie pie boy.
Rich, very excited to talk with you about a James Franco edition of Saturday Night Live, which I enjoyed.
Yeah, I thought this was a good episode. Lot to like here. Not a lot to love, but a lot to like. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, fun episode. Good to be back. We're live here on Sunday night on 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and a lot to talk about. We've got the chat room going on postshowrecaps.com. We've also are on Twitter at hashtag PSRecaps, and also on our YouTube channel at postshowrecaps.com/YouTube. Also, this is the first time you're hearing the SNL recap on our new podcast network home at Podcast One. So, Rich, welcome to Podcast One.
Wow, I didn't even know. I would have worn a shirt with a collar.
Yeah. Well, they can only hear you, so we'll imagine you in some nicer shirt.
Good.
All right. So, Rich, we're going to talk about the episode here, and I thought there was a lot of things to like overall in this episode. I thought it was very fun.
Yeah, it was good to see James Franco back. He hasn't hosted since 2009, although he came back last year when Seth Rogen was the host and did a cameo in the monologue, and then did the somewhat infamous digital short Monster Pals with Mike O'Brien, which was really fun. So he's a familiar face, even though he hasn't hosted in a few years. And Nicki Minaj hosting for her second time, from a comedic standpoint, was very remembered for her 2001 episode with Jesse Eisenberg doing the Creep, the digital short with the Lonely Island guys. So she also has some comedic skin in the game coming into this.
Okay. All right, well, we're going to talk about everything, and we'll investigate the James Franco and Mike O'Brien alliance as we go along. But let's start with the cold open, which was with Reverend Al Sharpton. And, Rich, I can't believe it, what I'm saying, but did we actually have topical use for the Reverend Al Sharpton?
Yeah, again, I said this a few weeks ago. I think that since Piers Morgan Live has been canceled, the show is really struggling to find a container with which to do a topical news segment in the cold open, and they're sort of settling on this as the best that they can do. I do like the sort of inside joke because Al Sharpton had lost a lot of weight many years ago, and Keenan is much heavier than him. He said Al Sharpton this week said he's so upset that he gained in 3 days he gained over 100 pounds. So I like that they're referencing the fact that he's so much heavier. I think we all kind of get the game of the scene. Basically, is that Al Sharpton is so dumb that he mispronounces words that are on the teleprompter for him. Always make me laugh, but I don't know that it's the best format for doing these sort of topical things. But overall, moved quickly, and there was some fun stuff.
Yeah, but I feel like for the first time they actually have like a story about race in New York City, which is like how Reverend Al Sharpton really got on the map in his rise to notoriety, that at least they got to have Keenan doing this as Al Sharpton. So it was like a good spot for Al Sharpton.
Yes, and by the way, in the weirdest foreshadowing ever on SNL, how much did Bobby Moynihan's Staten Island PBA guy Peter Dinello make you think of Anthony Crispino with a smaller mustache? Only for them to appear later in the show. I thought, this is the Staten Island version of Anthony Crispino.
I thought that Anthony Crispino is the Staten Island version of Anthony Crispino.
That may be. It's all very odd choice of timing on things.
But overall, I thought Keenan was good here in Al Sharpton. It's sort of like the joke started off that it was Al Sharpton doing his stuff, and then they segued into the Bobby Moynihan. But I felt like both ends of this cold open were strong.
Yeah, no, I thought this was good, and I do, you can easily say that it's an easy gag that he was what he said the circumstances with Dubois. Oh, I'm sorry, that's dubious. Makes me laugh, and then there's something about the defense was twottered. He said, oh, I'm sorry, that's two-tiered.
Yeah.
That stuff, it does make me laugh every time.
Yeah, it was a good way that they did the joke where they had the word on the screen in the lower third, and then you could read it along with Al Sharpton to sort of get like the word joke.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, so that definitely made me laugh. So yeah, I thought it was. I thought, and again, I like Keenan in cold opens. His kind of crazy energy and pronunciation and inflections to me work so well in cold opens. So good way to start the show.
Yeah, I thought the Bobby Moynihan segment also was good. And I also like the last joke about that the protesters slowing down Manhattan traffic is a good way to get people on your side.
Yeah. Also, again, another weird thing that I've talked about many times before, an odd thing that so many jokes in the cold open are almost exactly mirrored when we get to Weekend Update. So the pie chart of talking about Staten Island, how he talks about how it's like 90% cops, and and then we're gonna see. I think he said the other 95% cops, the other 5% are firefighters and members of the Wu-Tang Clan. And then in Weekend Update, we're gonna do almost the exact same joke later. So a little odd that producers of Weekend Update and producers of the main show are not sort of like doing a little joke comparison on their topical stuff, but still pretty funny.
All right, so we get through the cold open and through a high energy Daryl Hammond reading of everybody's names.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Yeah. The scary thing is that I'm starting to get used to it, but it's still. I was explaining this to somebody over the weekend at an event, and I was saying my problem is, and I've said this before, but I'm just going to clarify it one more time for people who were like, "What is your problem?" Is that even though we understand it's probably pre-taped, the way Don Pardo used to do it, it was as if he was screaming it over the live audience, and Daryl Hammond is not. So the fact that we have the audience yelling and cheering as audio in the background of this delivery is such a weird shot. So just come on, guys. At least over the Christmas break, let's figure this thing out.
This is probably not the right spot to do, but we're talking about Daryl Hammond. A couple people had caught that Daryl Hammond mispronounced the name of next week's band. Did you follow? Did you catch this?
I saw that. Now, I've seen. I don't even know how do you say Charli Xcx's name. I don't know how you actually pronounce it because I'm old.
I was watching the East Coast feed, and maybe when we bring in James Keese later to talk about the musical performance, he could set us straight on this. But I was following it along, and I'm reading on the screen, and it was almost like an Al Sharpton moment, where it's like he says, Martin Freeman with musical guest Charli Xcx.
Oh, really?
I'm like, is there an extra XC in the X?
Oh, then they fixed it because when I saw it on the West Coast feed, I'm fairly positive he just said Charli Xcx. So then when there was when I was seeing on Twitter the buzz about the, I thought, oh, is that not how you say her name? I thought it was. So maybe they did fix it, or maybe it was and not a mistake, a tape in the playback. Maybe there was a hiccup in the digital file they were playing back. Good question, but I'd love to hear more. I don't know more about that.
Okay, yeah, let us know in the chat as we go along. All right, so let's bring in James Franco, and we have a monologue and a topical monologue.
Yeah, exactly. I like that they tie it into what I always considered a very industry story that the Sony servers were hacked. The big story that came out of that, I think, was that the salaries of the top executives at Sony were leaked to the world and the industry. That was information they clearly did not want out there. So we used that as an excuse to basically do a little take on the cell phone hacking scandal, and our old friend Seth Rogen in the least surprising surprise of the night shows up to return the favor. But we get to do a little slideshow, which I thought they did a little nice run on.
Yeah. Now, were you surprised that James Franco and Seth Rogen seem to be so glib about this when a lot of people are theorizing that it's because of their new film was the reason why Sony ended up getting hacked?
I had heard that was potentially the reason, although who knows. I like that. I mean, this was such an innocuous sort of take on it. Now, obviously for some people it was fairly serious and it's not funny, but you could say that about most current events that we're dealing with. So, I think there were not very many cutting jabs in this. I thought they did a nice job.
Yeah. It just seemed to me like it's it's their movie that is potentially the reason why this happened, and then here they are like horsing around about this.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's 11:30 at night. Who's paying
Yeah,
attention?
I guess so. And it's their job really to make a hit. I think
Yeah.
they come away with a big hit. How do you think that movie's going to do, Rich?
Oh, I don't think it will do well at all.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of the most quests of all time to make this movie because I don't think it's
Yeah.
going to be a box office success. A critical hit, perhaps.
It looks funny. It doesn't look funny enough to go, and I have a hunch a lot of people are going to feel this.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we have all of the pictures, sort of like a little bit of a hangover thing.
Yeah. Yeah, cute, fun photos. A lot of Seth Rogen clearly seems to be, comfortable making fun of his body by being half naked or mostly naked in a lot of pictures, or wearing control top pantyhose. I like it, like the moxie that he brings. So it was all fun. And then a weird tag, by the way. I don't know if you noticed. I don't know if James Franco forgot or if it was a last-minute ad. He starts to throw it to the "We have a great show tonight," and he stops to say, "Hey, any girls that got Instagram messages from me? It wasn't me. It was the hackers." So, with fun line, fun tag, but he flubbed it. I wondered if they added that at the last minute or if originally he was going to cut it or something.
Okay. Let's take a question from Johnny D. Silvera, who says, can we confirm that North Korea hasn't hacked PS recaps on RHAP? Yes, we can confirm that, right?
Hope so. Hope so.
Let's keep it that way. All right?
Yeah.
All right. Any particular other jokes from the monologue that you really liked?
No, I thought they were all cute. I liked the fact that they kept it short. They kept it paced well. For live with cutaways, it was really good pacing on this. Sometimes this can get really bogged down in waiting for the photos, reading off cue cards. Overall, I thought this was really fun.
Okay. Let's move on to discuss the parody of Peter Pan live. And Reg, it's the return of your girl Tonk.
Tonk is back from the Jim Parsons episode. We have Tonk. I gotta say, I think overall, I think Tonk was a one-hit wonder. I think maybe she would have been remembered more fondly with a one and done. I don't know that we got a lot more nuances to Tonk that we didn't really explore deep enough in the Jim Parsons
episode. You got Tonked.
Exactly. So we found out, I think she's half fairy, half fly. I did like the fact that she runs a business as a reverse tooth fairy where she takes $1 and leaves one of her teeth. But other than that, I don't know that necessarily Tonk. This was definitely a mashup. There was no clear focus to this. There was no game, as one would say. It was like, okay, well, we're going to it's an excuse to bring back Tonk, but we're also going to make fun of the fact that a girl is playing Peter Pan with Cecily playing that role, which was an odd choice because the Peter Pan's been done that since I think like the 40s. I mean, since Mary Martin and probably earlier. So it's not like NBC made a choice to that Allison Williams was crazy casting or something. Although I thought Cicely did a good job. And then it is not hard to do a Christopher Walken impression, but makes me laugh every time. So I enjoyed James Franco as Christopher Walken.
You thought it was a good impression?
I thought it was good enough. I mean, again, is it a good impression? I mean, there's so many great impressions that it's hard to say that something like this was good. Here's a big surprise, Rob. I did not watch Peter Pan live.
No, I did not watch it either.
I cannot speak to the specificity of the jokes, but the idea that the way they did a song and he's really only saying one-word responses, I thought was very clever and cute. So I could definitely have watched more of this and a little bit less Tonk.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% about the lack of focus in the Tonkerbell thing because the first Tonk sketch was about the relationship between Peter Pan and Tonk, and then this was really just like a Tonk was there, and you're right, it was just like we were spending time with Peter Pan, we were spending time with whether or not this was scary, and a couple other things. So yeah, I think that they did not get hit the nail on the head with Tonk.
Yeah, I will say in this sketch, the MVP of this sketch for me was Taran Killam, who had no lines other than backup singing in the song, and yet had this crazy, dopey smile. He had this weird, like, entire smile like the whole time. I loved the commitment that he went 110% on the choice, and then without ever getting a line commenting on it, he just did it for the entire sketch. So good on Taran Killam. Been a little sidelined lately, or inconsistently, and yet still he brings it every show. So I really like that.
I also liked that she called, I believe it was Kyle Mooney, a business baby.
A fancy business baby. Oh, please, fancy business baby.
Yeah. And Mark in the chat room wants to remind us, and that's what's up.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Let's go ahead and let's move on to another sketch that I think is probably going to be the one that gets the most buzz online, and that is the Star Wars trailer.
Now, this is a clean game. This was a very, very simple focus that the original cast is now quite old, and we're going to make fun of the original cast members as old people. So I thought this was fun, a little bit long. Some of the, interestingly, the impressions, none of the impressions were particularly good, and yet I thought a lot of the jokes were very funny. So
Not even Harrison Ford?
Maybe I haven't seen a Harrison. It's weird to think I haven't seen a Harrison Ford movie in probably 7 years. I don't know what plane he's blowing up or what firewall he's taking down these days, so I can't really speak to Harrison Ford anymore. But I don't know that was the best impression. But then him ordering the early bird special was not something I saw coming. I thought that was very funny.
Also, when I watched the East Coast version, I feel like one of the effects was missing. Also, in the effect where, and tell me if you saw this also in the chat room, the effect where they do the bit on with Luke Skywalker with the walker.
Yes, there was no effect on it. It was only a sound effect with the walker.
Yes, but then when I watched it today on my Yahoo app. Yahoo Screen app, which is a good way to watch a lot of the SNL clips. They had the lightsaber effect on the walker.
Oh, okay. That didn't make the West Coast feed either. Interesting.
So I wonder if it was like flying in. All right, we're not gonna have it for show, so
exactly.
We'll just do it in post.
It's as Lauren says, we don't go live because we're ready. We go live because it's 11:30. So they probably just didn't get it done in quite enough time.
Yep. I loved Bobby Moynihan as Carrie Fisher with trying to program R2-D2. That was great. I love the flashing 12 o'clock on R2-D2.
I love Chewbacca with the cone around his head and no reference to the cone. I thought that was great. And I also love the Millennium Falcon going slow and then just like, go around.
Yeah, the blinker on the Millennium Falcon. I love the pills going into all of the right all the right things. That was great also. So I thought that was very, very fun. I don't know how memorable this is going to be, but I feel like this was very, very fun.
Yeah, I thought this was such a good, clean game that it will get more traction because it was clearly about something. So I could see this having a lot of legs on the internet over the next week or so, and fun stuff.
Okay, let's talk about the hip hop nativity with Tyler Smith.
Yeah. I felt like the sum of the parts was actually greater than the whole. I don't know that overall this was such a great sketch, but there was so much about it to like, so many little pieces along the way that really made me giggle, that I liked enough of it to say that I was very amused by this sketch, even though I don't actually think overall it was a particularly great one.
Yeah, lots of impressions here. It did feel a lot like in the last live show that we did all of the, was it the young tarts and old farts?
Yes, exactly, yes.
Yeah, seemed like a little bit of a reprise of like, okay, let's do more music impressions in one sketch. But anytime we can bring in the Kate McKinnon, Justin Bieber, I'm down.
Thank you. It was such a breath of fresh air to have the Justin Bieber. It makes me laugh so hard. I think it's just so funny. Sashir started us off with Rihanna. Not a particularly good impression. I mean, Sashir's just not an impressionist. She doesn't really do impressions. So even though she actually has a decent enough singing voice that to add the accent to it, she was fine. It really added nothing to me. Although I thought that one of my favorite jokes in the whole bit was Sashir. It got a little lost in it. I liked when she referred to the Virgin Mary as the original teen mom. That was a very clever piece of writing. So so it kind of gave us a little bit of like, what? And then again, my boy Taron Killam really kind of bringing the sketch back to life and kind of waking us all up with his Eminem impression, which I thought was very funny.
Yeah. Who was the guy in the middle, in between Eminem and Rick Ross?
We'll ask James when we bring him on, because I was like, what? I heard the name, I didn't know it. And Rick Ross, is Rick Ross really that popular, or is it just because Keenan looks like him?
I think this is at least the third time we've seen Rick Ross on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, yes. Anytime there's a rap, anything rap or hip-hop related, we're usually breaking out the Rick Ross impression.
And it's like the same line for Keenan every time.
It doesn't seem very good. So, and then we get our first spotting of Nicki Minaj as Beyonce with Justin Bieber. And I really like Nicki Minaj as Beyonce. I liked it because it didn't go, especially when you have someone who's not an actor doing an impression, we usually see it go to 11 and go to a very, very broad, shrieky impression. And this was I liked that she was making fun of the over-serious Beyonce and the Queen Diva Beyonce. So I thought it was really good.
Okay, let's take a question about that Beyonce impression. This is from The Racing Source. It says, Nicki Minaj broke the usual criteria for a musical guest. Usually the musical guest only appears in one sketch, if any. Her impressions were lame. Nasim Pedrad, Maya Rudolph make way better impressions of Kim Kardashian and Beyonce. So, Rich, not everybody as high as Nicki Minaj, or as high on Nicki Minaj.
Well, I will definitely agree. I'll hold it for Weekend Update, but I will definitely disagree with the Kardashian piece. And I think, clearly we've seen better Beyoncé's on SNL by professionals. But you know what? It was short. It was a nice little piece. I thought it was good. So I'm going to respectfully disagree. And I'm not going to say that. I was reading today, like, oh, Nicki Minaj was so great, she should host. Let's all slow it down. Let's bring it. Let's get back to that. She was good, and if she hosted, I would not be super upset by that. But in general, it wasn't that great. But I liked it. I thought it was fun.
Did Nicki Minaj benefit from low expectations?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm seeing, by the way, Rob, in the chat room, Mark and Sue are talking about that. James Franco was playing his character from the movie Spring Breakers, which makes sense. I did not see that movie, but it makes sense.
Okay, we'll go with that. All right, so let's talk about the return of Mike O'Brien.
So this is an interesting one on a lot of different levels. And let's get a little nerdy, because if you're listening to a podcast about SNL, you're probably with us. So this was the first time we've seen a digital short that gets the credit at the top, a Mike O'Brien picture, which is a very interesting choice, which is not, Lauren's not giving that away. They don't just hand those out when you show up like a merit badge or something. Also very odd, because at the end, Matt and Oz, longtime directors of a lot of the pre-tape pieces, get a directing credit. So very odd that we're calling it a Mike O'Brien picture, even though clearly Mike O'Brien did not direct it. I'm wondering if a deal was sort of made. Mike O'Brien's been doing a lot of, he did the Monster Pals, which we referred to before. He recently did one of the best pre-tapes, which I liked a lot, which was the White commercial parody. So it seems like that's just sort of becoming his thing. I think maybe he even wrote Sad Mouse. I'm 95% sure about that.
That sounds right.
Which I think Sad Mouse was probably one of my favorite pre-tape pieces of the decade. So maybe that's sort of where we're moving him into that he's getting some branding. So interesting that he was a cast member. He's not a cast member. He's still a writer. He's getting this nod. So just as an overall, I thought a very interesting sort of shift going on behind the scenes of Saturday Night Live.
Do you think that there is some sort of turf war between Mike O'Brien and his camp and the Good Neighbor camp?
Well, they're such different pieces, but it definitely could be in the vacuum that was created by Andy Samberg leaving, and the need for SNL to want to brand the digital pieces in some way to sort of keep that legacy alive. I could easily see sort of the split, and it was also interesting that there was no Good Neighbor bit in this episode.
Interesting.
So who knows what's going on? I mean, the Good Neighbor bits have been hit and miss. Couple of hits, but a lot of misses. So this could be an interesting move.
Do you think the next Good Neighbor short we see will be branded Good Neighbor?
I would bet that it is not, because I don't think that that's how Lorne rolls, but it would be interesting if it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. All right, let's talk about the actual hashtag grow a guy.
I did like this. I mean, what I like about the stuff that Mike O'Brien writes is you kind of never see where it's coming and where it's going, and I like the mix of comedy and pathos. I wouldn't say drama, but there's really kind of a nice pathos to the piece, and it kind of keeps turning and turning and turning. I know a lot of people didn't really like the end. I didn't bother me at all. It was just sort of a fun ending. So as a piece, I thought it was good, and I thought the chemistry between Mike O'Brien and James Franco was really good.
Yeah, and they worked together on the monster sketch, and I wonder if they had a rapport.
Yeah.
They wanted to work together again.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if it was Franco who said we got to do another one of those. That was really fun. So yeah. And I'll throw out another MVP because I like when supporting people in a supporting role in a sketch just do a great job. I loved Beck Bennett in this sketch. Beck Bennett as the douchey friend. We've all had that friend before. I think after too many bourbons, I've been that friend before. And I just thought he gave the piece such a nice pathos by actually being that jerk that we've all known, especially in high school and college. Did such a good job as sort of the jerk of the piece that the whole rest of the piece felt good because the way that it was set up by Beck Bennett being an actual jerk, that it gave the sketch some kind of meat to it. So good job, Beck Bennett, which I have not said in a long time.
Okay, here's a question. This is from Racing Source. The Create a Guy sketch. Love seeing alumni Mike O'Brien make an appearance in the sketch, and love the self-destruction at the end. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the season Mike O'Brien decides to return as a featured player and Mike O'Brien Films becomes the next SNL digital shorts. Well, that is very, very bullish opinion.
I would also say that, again, there's no rules to this, but traditionally, the only other time other than the Lonely Island, which was negotiated when they first came on, we had the Adam Mckay digital shorts. Remember, the term digital short wasn't even invented back with the Lonely Island guys. Adam Mckay, who at the time was the head writer of the show, was doing digital shorts in the 90s, and they were labeled as Adam Mckay digital shorts, which I think is the title is given when you're not going to be a cast member. The same way that even in 1975, Albert Brooks was never considered a cast member in the opening credits, but he would get an Albert Brooks film, or Tom Schiller had Schiller Vision. This could be a nod to you're not going to get a card in the opening cast, but we'll give you this.
Got it. All right, let's talk about the Troll Bridge, and I thought this was not one of the high points of the night for me.
I didn't think it was one of the high points, but it was. The thing is, if this was the lowest moment of the show, we're doing pretty good, because this wasn't. There was a lot of funny kind of buried within this. It was definitely a lot of what's going on here? What are they doing? And the sort of different characters that was going on. It's just everything about it was really kind of fun in a way that didn't actually add up for me, but it was still really fun. Parts all over the place.
Cecily's character, have we seen this character before?
That was driving me crazy, because I feel like this was in two places. I don't think we've seen this character. I'd love to see if anyone in the chat room remembers. But I think we've seen a lot of parts of this characters of characters kind of put together to do this. Similarly, for no reason, Kyle Mooney's character was basically Bruce Chandling, the bad stand-up comic from Weekend Update, but not exactly. But it was such a weird choice that he was doing this shticky performance in the middle of a troll sketch. It was very odd. It was very odd to me. Yeah. So I liked a lot of the little pieces, although, as we talked about last year in the Andrew Garfield episode, I'm always a little bit like, really, it's 2014. Is the punchline to a joke, look at men kiss men? Like, really, that's so funny that a man kissing a man is so outrageous that we're going to get a big laugh off of it. So I was a little disappointed that was sort of the big laugh of the sketch. I could, not that I could do without it, but it's I feel like we're doing better than that. We've moved past that as a society.
Yeah. So I want to just make a distinction of that. You're not saying like get that off my screen.
No, no, no.
You're
I mean
saying
the
that,
opposite. I'm saying
yeah.
like right. If the premise of the joke is, oh, aren't you gonna laugh because two men kissing is so crazy that it's worth making fun of? Like, really, isn't that just like two men kissing is so not a thing? We're so like, okay, that's gay marriage is legal in most of the states watching the show. Let's just move past that as a joke. It's not really a joke anymore.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you for the clarification.
also, they really did go for it, though.
Oh yes, they were committed 100%. That's for sure.
So that's good. Sue Hawkeye brings up the sketch that I was thinking of. Cecily's character reminded me of Deidre from the Oliver Twist sketch last season. Was that the Jimmy Fallon episode?
Yes, the Jimmy. I was thinking about that sketch. I feel like that's probably the closest that I could think of stuff that she was doing.
Okay. Let's go ahead and make sure that. Yeah, let's go ahead and bring in James to talk about the musical performance of Nicki Minaj. And here is from Exclaim Magazine, the editor of Exclaim Magazine. Here's James Keith. James, how are you doing tonight?
Good, guys. How are you?
Good.
Fantastic.
I was
James,
just watching the Anaconda video. I don't know why I just can't get that out of my head.
James, first off, before we get to Nicki Minaj, any thoughts on the MTV Hip Hop Christmas?
Rick Ross is famous. Keenan's Rick Ross impression is fairly terrible. And
Sounds about right.
James Franco's impression is actually even more layered. He was playing a rapper named Riff Raff, and when Spring Breakers came out, Riff Raff, who is a totally minor character in the hip-hop world, when Spring Breakers came out, Riff Raff threatened to sue the film company and James Franco because he thought that James Franco was doing an impression of him in Spring Breakers. So he's playing a real guy who he may also be his character in Spring Breakers.
Okay, got it.
Wow, very meta. I like it.
So was this James Franco like rubbing it in his face, like try to sue me on this obvious parody?
It sort of felt that way because he's not really famous enough to be in a lineup with Eminem and Rick Ross and Beyonce and Rihanna.
Yeah.
You know, he was certainly the minor character in that lineup.
All right, let's talk about Nicki Minaj, James.
So Nicki has a very anticipated record coming out next Tuesday called The Pink Print. And so she dropped a new song. The first song was her new single called Bed of Lies. The woman on the piano to start is Skylar Grey, who's an American singer-songwriter. She has her own solo career, but she's probably best known. She co-wrote the Eminem and Rihanna hit "Love the Way You Lie," and she sung hooks on hits for Dr. Dre and T.I. and Diddy. So that's probably how she's best known. And Nicki made an interesting choice, I think, because to sort of hardcore hip-hop fans, she's known as one of the most talented straight-up rappers in the world, and she decided to go with 3 different, more low-key songs. Bed of Lies is a relatively mid-tempo kind of thing, and then for the second performance, it was actually kind of a mashup of 2 more recent singles. And I thought it was an interesting choice because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Rich, you weren't anticipating Nicki's performance this week.
I was very much not, no, and very happy. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think she presented kind of the most accessible side of what she does to this audience, and I thought that was a smart choice on her part.
Yes, as a not fan, I really enjoyed. I enjoyed both songs very much. I thought she did a great job.
Yeah.
James, what about the pronunciation of next week's musical guest?
So it's Charli Xcx, and what I heard was Daryl Hammond said Charli XX and then paused and said XCX, like he corrected himself. And I thought it was funny because I didn't think that he was doing the intros live. I thought they were pre-recorded. But I presume that if he had pre-recorded them, he would have not left the mistake in. So,
yeah, Rich, what's going on?
I can't. Well, we know that the opening is clearly recorded. Are they recording? And it's not like we were surprised that Charli's the musical guest, that they threw it at the last minute. I don't know what's going on. It was definitely fixed for the West Coast feed, but I need to get some intel on what's going on behind the scenes with that.
Because if, we're seeing that he's not there for the opening, why bring him there in the studio just to say next week?
Yeah, very odd. Very. I mean, we know that he's recording and your host James Franco, but he does not seem like he's doing that live in the studio. I cannot believe that that's actually live. So, good question. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah. All right. James, so are you excited for Charli XCXXXCX?
All of the consonants I'm excited about.
What is their brand of music?
So she's a young British singer, songwriter. She has a new record that's coming out, I also believe, next week. I haven't heard it yet, but Rolling Stone put it in their top 10 best albums of the year, which was an unusual choice since their list came out 3 weeks before the record came out. So I guess it's supposed to be good.
Okay.
That's even more surprising than the fact that there's still such a thing as Rolling Stone magazine.
Yeah. All right. Well, James, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Take care.
Talk to you next week.
All right. Bye. All right. So let's go ahead and jump into weekend update, Rich.
So we start out with what we're seeing as sort of a theme, which is Colin and Michael doing a sort of a piece on a topic, which I like as the beginning. I like that instead of just going into random jokes, that we're taking a topic and we're doing 3, 4, or 5 jokes on the topic. I don't know that it necessarily worked for me. I felt like the piece of Michael Che asking questions about there wasn't video, was there? Well, it wasn't clear. That didn't work for me. I felt like we saw that one coming down Rockefeller Center and making the left up to Studio 8H. But the rest of it I thought was very funny. I liked Colin Joe's joke about Staten Island. I liked him cap it with how they're not so progressive. They're still coming to Manhattan every day, huddled on a boat. I thought there's a lot of good jokes in there once we got past the original piece.
It was a tough night for Staten Island on the show last night.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of good jokes at their expense. So in general, a couple of pretty good jokes sort of peppered throughout. I still don't know if I would say they're totally hitting their stride together. I feel like Jost, who's got more screen time than Che does because he's been around longer, is starting to get more comfortable. We're going to see it with Leslie Jones. We're going to see it with a couple of just sort of jokes that he delivered. So I feel like Colin's coming into his own a little bit more.
All right, well, let's talk about the guests on the update desk because we have 3 of them in this episode. Let's start with the return of Anthony Crispino, Rich.
I gotta say the bloom has been off the rose with Anthony Crispino for a bit now. I feel like we haven't really found a way to reinvent what is essentially just a wordplay sketch. There's really not much going on with Anthony Crispino. I love Bobby, so I hate making a jab at Bobby, but I felt like just the whole the Christmas lighting was hosted by a raptor. It's just like...
No, it was the Rock and Old Yeller.
Oh, that's right, the Rock and Old Yeller, which was kind of like, so for me, getting a little tired of it. As I've said, I think the last time we saw Anthony Crispino, I'm really not a fan of us just doing the voice is getting higher and higher, and now we're going to go to a pre-tape piece of the Chipmunks this time. Feels just kind of formulaic. What I would say I do like is when they sort of took it into sort of the awkward territory. So when they talked about Bing Crosby,
yes,
a professional rapper, or as the kids call it, a rapist, then I felt like I was really liking it there, because that felt like now we're doing something with Anthony that's like we're starting to cross lines and using the wordplay to actually sort of touch something that's you wouldn't just come out and say.
Yeah, I thought Anthony Crispino was DOA, but the Bing Crosby, Bill Cosby, that I love that. I love the interplay there between him and Shay, and that was really damning with faint praise, but the high point. But I actually really liked that part.
Yes,
Everything else I thought was throw it out, but that was a really strong joke, and I wonder if they started there. I'd like to give them the benefit of the doubt today. Yeah. It's like, we got to do Anthony Crispino because this is such a good joke, but they just couldn't fill in the rest of it.
It could be, because when we're doing star whores, then they're whores that are in a trailer and they're not going to come out for a year. It's just sort of like, okay. I mean, it's clever on the page, but it's just not. It didn't really come to life. So yes, I could see that they sort of built around sort of a fun, like, oh, we should do something else with Cosby, but how do you touch Cosby again? We also had a shot in the a weird, almost sort of garbled shot in the Troll Bridge sketch where they took a shot at where the Cecily's character takes a shot at him, but this was definitely done very well. So maybe this is a new life for Anthony Crispino.
By the way, did you happen to catch some of the other videos that were around this week, floating around of between Tina Fey and Amy Poehler taking a shot at Bill Cosby from like the 2000s, and then also there's a clip of like a joke from 30 Rock about Bill Cosby being inappropriate. Did you happen to catch that?
I didn't watch them again. I saw those and I remembered some joke. I remembered the Tina Fey routine from Weekend Update way back in the day, because clearly this is not a new story. So it's only getting more and more sort of locked in. I didn't watch them again. Did you see them a second time?
I watched the Alec Baldwin clip from 30 Rock, and it was interesting. It's like, well, that seems like that would be odd for it to be a coincidence of him talking about like he was doing an impression of Bill Cosby with Tracy, and Tracy was talking about how Bill Cosby was inappropriate with his aunt in 1981.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so here's a question from the great Mike Bloom. What's that? Rich, what did you think of the dark, more accusatory tone at the beginning of Weekend Update? Is this closer to what you would like to see from the show regarding current events? No, you said you did not like that.
Well, here's what I would say to Mike. I really did like the Colin Jost part, because I thought it was really like a almost veering into a Jon Stewart role of like it was. Oh, the Colin Jost piece was almost like, come on, guys. And even the little bit of Michael Che doing the like, you used to pretend to be racist to get out of jury duty. Now you need to be racist to be on jury duty. Like, I did like that. What I specifically didn't like was the whole very calculated piece of asking questions and then, oh no, I knew, I just can't believe it. I felt like that didn't work, not from a tone perspective, but just from we kind of knew what was happening. I didn't see it to be particularly interesting to me. But overall, I don't mind that tone at all. I think that Jost plays that more than Che. I think Jost can play that well, and I bet Che just doing it more could
Yep.
too.
I think it's hard for SNL to sort of be like, at least have the appearance of being politically agnostic, and then also trying to make fun of these situations. Whereas somebody like a Bill Maher or somebody that's on the left can make their jokes, or somebody on the right can make certain jokes. I think it's hard to sort of say, hey, we're playing this down the middle like a late night talk show host, and still be biting when there's other people who are able to really go for the jugular on these things.
Yeah, which is why a few weeks ago I liked when with the Bill Cosby thing, I liked that Michael Che brought it around to Cliff Huxtable, and I thought it was a very sort of good take without sort of taking a specific stand on Bill Cosby, but still being able to comment on it. He did a good job.
Okay, let's talk about the return of Leslie Jones. And while it looked like Pete Davidson was going to be the runaway star of Weekend Update this season, he appears to be usurped by Leslie Jones.
Yeah, I'm going to just sort of say ditto to the comments I made the last time we had Leslie Jones on, which was not too long ago, that I really like her and I like the rapport that she has with Jost, but I did feel like the material could really have been cut down a lot. The whole bit about being on mushrooms and a lot of the whole Harriet Tubman stuff I felt like was really kind of long, and because Leslie's playing it at 11 the whole time, it's a lot. So I don't know that I bet that most people like this more than I do. I didn't dislike it, but I could have skipped this one, and I think we could have held our powder and done a Leslie Jones, next week, before Christmas, or 2 weeks from now before Christmas, and been done with the year.
Okay. What about Kim Kardashian, Nicki Minaj version?
Well, I thought this was fun. I mean, and well, here's what I was really struck by, and Mark and I in the chat room we were texting about this before. I can't remember the last time that a musical guest, not a host also musical guesting, but I cannot remember, and I'd love to see if anyone can remember when a musical guest came on to Weekend Update not as themselves and not with a cast member or a host as a team kind of sketch. So to kind of do a solo piece, I cannot remember this happening. I'm sure it has, but I can't remember it. So that was very interesting to me, just sort of on the precedent side of things. I don't know if this was a great Kim Kardashian impression. I think it was still a better or equal Kim Kardashian impression to the Nassim Pedrad impression, which I never thought was particularly great. Now, that said, I think part of it is Kim Kardashian beyond her butt is kind of forgettable, so there's not a lot
How
to sink
dare
into.
you, Tackenberg?
Yeah, I'm going to take a strong line on this. I don't think that there's a lot to sort of make fun of from a vocal, sort of reproduction kind of thing. But I thought this was fun. It was very silly. It was, at least they kept it short. I liked, I learned the mathematical expression x equals full frontal, and then we got out. So I thought this was a cute way to use Nicki Minaj one more time.
Okay. Let's go into talking about Jeremy's brain.
I liked this. I thought this was it was a really odd, fun, silly, like didn't see it coming. I don't know where you're coming from with it. A lot of the references were just really fun. They weren't the obvious references that you expect that we're gonna see. Again, Taron coming in and doing a Billy Zane impression from Titanic was really fun. Nicki Minaj doing Anaconda was really fun. So overall, I thought it was really fun. What did you think?
Yeah, it was fun. I wasn't cracking up or anything. I like the Judge Ito reference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, we got a lot of like random music acts. The dog Ubu from
Sid Ubu Sid.
Yeah.
Which was a little odd because given how old Pete Davidson was, I feel like Sid Ubu Sid goes back to like Mad About You and I think maybe Spin City. So I don't know if I don't know that he would really know that, but it still made me laugh. And I like that we needed a real dog to do that line.
Yeah. Let's take a question from Johnny D. Silvera. He wants to say, I know how Jeremy feels about his brain. I never want to forget the words to What Does the Llama Say? Yeah, well, that's a big hit song on Robin's podcast. Yeah. Yes. Mark wants to know, is this? Do you think, fingers crossed, that this will lead to a reboot of Herman's Head?
That's a topical sketch we haven't seen. I could see this sketch coming back, though. I definitely think that by February of next year, we could be seeing inside of somebody else's brain.
Okay. You don't think it would be Jeremy again, needing more room?
I think they would probably want to mix it up, just so that, like, I think that we could see, like, one of the women, like, we could see inside of Sashir Zamata's brain of her doing a character or something to mix it up.
What do you think of like the sequel to Jeremy's Brain? Is either like Jeremy is like at a party and he's like drinking, or he's like smoking pot or something, and then all of the stuff is like getting like crazy in his brain?
Could be.
I like some sort of like wild mixer of like all sorts of different things happening in there. Okay, let's talk about the kid mayor.
So it's so ridiculous, this is one of those, like, at first I'm like, well, this clearly doesn't make any sense. Like, why are we having such a dumb setup? And then I realized that there was truth to this, that this was based on a topical event that I think a 5-year-old mayor in Minnesota lost his re-election campaign just a few weeks ago, I believe, when I was doing my research.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, it was because it was such a weird, like, what is this? Like, what are they doing? But I really liked this too. I thought this was also really funny. It was a really stupid idea, but I liked because there was this Robert Bobby Tufts lost his bid for a 3rd consecutive term as mayor of Dorset, Minnesota. Was actually beaten by a 16-year-old. So there was some real ridiculousness to this. But I thought, like, taking that as sort of the game of the scene, and how would you how would you run a recall? How would you run an election against a 4-year-old? I thought this was really fun. They did such a good job.
Yeah, and I liked that when he was calling him out, and he was talking about the custodian. He said he pooped his pants. I haven't pooped my pants since last year.
Yeah.
That's really great. He's talking about and he's like, and he likes Frozen, even though he's a boy. It's really, I love James Franco in this, and very funny. So he breaks, and then is trying to get it back also.
And I like that he broke, but he didn't hang on the break. He really kind of regained his composure and then held it for the rest of the sketch, which I admire. He did a really good job on this.
It's very good. All right, Rich, and then we have the return of the porn stars here, talking about Sunseeker Yachts.
The porn stars was fun. I thought it was really a good idea. I felt like the timing was right to bring them back. It's so hard to say because, again, this is a Mad Lib sketch. It's the same sketch literally every time, including the host showing up at the prescribed moments. So it really just comes down to the writing and whether the writing is good or not. I was not able to pull a couple of lines, but there were definitely a couple of lines that really made me laugh on this one. So I was sort of happy to see it return.
Yeah, I think the only one I wrote down was, or the two that I wrote down was, we're going to need a bigger throat. I thought that was... And there's something about and then we have to pull out. And I said, what does pull out mean? That was very good. That was very good also. I also liked when Seth Rogen comes out and says, and I'm James Franco.
Yes. And I did like their take that they were seersucker yaks. I thought that for some reason, seersucker yaks. I thought that made me laugh for some reason. Yeah. And I will say here, because again, my rules about SNL can be very nuanced. While I have a very strong rule against cameos being one and done, I'm going to amend that and say I really liked seeing Seth Rogen here because I felt like he showed up in the monologue and now we're not seeing him again to all the way to the end of the show, and also we're seeing him in a sketch that has been beaten to death. So it's not like it's a new sketch. It's like, oh, it would have been so fun if he just showed up out of nowhere. This was like, okay, it's the end of the show. We're doing the porn stars for the 19th time, and the energy between the four of them was very fun. So
you're going to make an exception for the 12:55 sketch.
Especially when the first time you show up is the monologue. So we've had an hour where we forget that you're there. That I give the exception to. So I'll call it out.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fair. That's fair. All right. Let's talk about the goodbyes, Rich.
Fun goodbyes tonight, gotta say, fun goodbyes. Odd and fun that he called out in James Franco, thanking everyone who was there and thanking new friends and old, including Jenna, Higgins, and Lorne. An odd choice. Lorne, we know Steve Higgins, one of the most senior producers on the show. We know him also as the announcer of the Tonight Show in Odd Double Duty. And then Jenna is most likely Jenna Rossitano, who's one of the stage managers on the show. So I'm sure when you're a guest host and you're in almost every sketch and you're running from sketch to sketch, you probably get very close to the stage manager. So fun there, and watching the Goodnights on Hulu a couple of times. Franco really makes the rounds. He says a quick hug to Nicki and to Seth, and then starts making the rounds, and he's hugging Bobby and he's hugging Karen, and it felt like a very warm Goodnight. So it was a nice, felt really good out there. There was no moat on the stage. It was very warm group.
How would you do it if you hosted SNL? Would you do the move where would you have a position and people can come and hug you, or are you going around to find everybody, even though you'll get lost in the cameras?
I think if you've got confidence, you go to the cast. I think that a lot of probably insecure talent, and I get this, is kind of like, oh, I'm at Goodnights and I'm kind of waiting for people to come to me. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I think the better to move is get moving, hugs, a lot of joking, a lot of action going on. The milling about creates a really nice Goodnight flow and camera work when we see a lot of people moving, a lot of hugs, a lot of whispering in the ear, and then the big laugh afterwards. So I'd like to see a lot of sort of action going on in my Goodnight.
You like the milling?
I like the milling. I like the milling.
Milling is good.
I like when it feels like a dinner party and it feels like like a great kind of like people are all around and hanging. So it was a very nice, warm, good feel to the good nights tonight.
Okay, a couple of questions about this week's episode from the great Alex Wilpon. She wants to know, at least James Franco had energy last night. I was worried he'd give us an Oscar-esque performance.
Yeah, I think that once you bring Seth Rogen into the mix, you're going to get a very different James Franco than at the Oscar night, with no diss to Anne Hathaway, who was an unbelievable trooper in that train wreck of an experience. But yeah, I think this is definitely the right motif for him when he can be making dick jokes and silly troll jokes and pooping in his pants and having a Christmas stocking over his junk for a Christmas card. I think that's the James Franco that we know and love.
Okay, one more question from Mike Bloom. He wants to know, did anyone else think that a lot of the James Franco sketches could have been alternates for the Chris Pratt episode? Do they do that? Do they put a sketch like, oh, this didn't work for Chris Pratt, let's put it in the drawer, or now here's James Franco, let's try this now?
Yeah, well, we just saw that on the Baby Boss sketch when that this was written for the Sarah Silverman episode, got cut. It was done at Dress with Sarah Silverman, and then came back for our last episode with Cameron. So certainly could be the case. Yeah.
Okay. Rich, are you excited for Martin Freeman next week?
I'm very excited for Martin. I love Martin Freeman, as we talked about at the beginning of the show. I know his big thing is The Hobbit, but just going back to The Office, the UK edition, as Tim, who became Jim in the American version, I'm a huge fan of Martin Freeman. I've seen him in a lot of stuff. I love Sherlock, and I think the one of the reasons I love Sherlock so much is Martin Freeman as Watson is just so good. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of his. I don't know how he'll do doing live comedy, but I'm very excited to see him.
All right, Rich. Well, we're at that time again. Time to say goodnight to everybody. Rich, again, fantastic job on the SNL recap.
I'd like to thank some new friends to the podcast, some of the old friends. You know who you are. It's just a great week. It's such a wonderful week to be here.
As always, wonderful week. First off, thanks to James Keast. Great job breaking down all things Nicki Minaj and Rick Ross and all of the musical acts on the show this week. And great job also by Scott St. Pierre collecting all the comments. Also, thanks to everybody who had questions tonight between Racing Source, Johnny DeSilvera, Mike Bloom, and Alex Wilpon.
Fantastic, and a thanks to Mark NYC, CNYC. sorry, we'll get that. We'll clean that up, Rob. Clean it up before you post it.
Yeah. Also, thanks everybody else who chatted with us live during the show. Chris Burgers, to Hawkeye, so many other people. Thank you guys so much. Also, I want to thank everybody that subscribed to the podcast also this week. Go to postshowrecaps.com/SNL iTunes as well. Thanks to Podcast One for having us on board as part of the Post Show Recaps podcast channel, Rich.
Oh, love it. Fantastic.
All right, we'll be back next week to talk about Martin Freeman. Same spot, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Hope you can join us live. Have a great week, everybody. We'll talk to you again soon. Good milling. Good milling.